Welcome to First Church, First Center here in New York City. Welcome to our self-healing class, our Louise Hay class, or some of you know it as our Hay and Holmes class. Louise Hay started at this center, I don't know how many years ago, and this is where she got her training in science of mind, and she initially did her practitioner work, which became the basis of two of her different publications. So we're really happy to be able to continue on with her work here. I personally have been running a self-healing class of some kind for well over 30 years, and it's always interesting, it's always fun. I know the work is important. Jimmy always says we're doing important work and we're not stopping, we're not coming down, and it's our privilege to be able to present this information to people. We know it helps. It's mind-boggling the number of people who are listening to these broadcasts now on the various social media platforms. So every week we're having people sign in from different parts of the world. It's not just New York, it's not just America, it's everywhere. So it's humbling and it's an honor to do it and to present it. As Jimmy said, we don't charge anyone. If people want to donate, there's all kinds of options in our media and our webpage, so you can support the work we do. This evening's lesson is, well, it came from a Louise Hay seminar, and the section of it that I want to talk about now was entitled, "What do we do now?" Okay. After all we know, or in some cases, if you know what you don't know, where do we go from here? How do we go from here to there? And Louise was speaking to a group who had already concluded, it's a workshop she was doing, that each of them had certain patterns of thought and or behavior that were playing out in their lives, and realized that this isn't coincidental. And what she was trying to explain is, if I have a pattern where I'm just so optimistic, then most likely I'm producing all kinds of happy occurrences in my life, and that's not a coincidence. If I'm committed to what we'll say our teaching many years ago, they would ask me, am I a lifter or am I a leaner? And that was a perplexing question at the time. Am I a person that's lifting up people? Am I encouraging? Am I the person who's saying great and good? Or am I kind of like energetically a drag? Because if I'm a lifter, people probably like having me around because I'm an encouraging presence. If I'm a pain in the butt to everybody, then they won't be so thrilled to see me. So in that workshop, she was emphasizing that there's patterns of thought and behavior that people have in their being, and they don't even know that they're that. I have a couple friends, I don't know why, I guess, you love them anyway, but they're very, very negative. And, we did a talk recently on the high cost of the negatives. And I did think to myself last week at one point, I thought, God, I listen to this stuff a lot, And there's no fixing other people. That's one thing that I've learned the hard way. Raymond Charles Barker did that famous talk that we speak of sometimes, which he called it How to Change Other People. And on that given Sunday, he had the biggest attendance when he announced it. And, of course, when he got everybody there, he said, you can't do it. So these patterns of thought and behavior that we have within us are producing our lives, right? And she said it's not coincidental. So you only have to look to your life and see how it's going. And then if you don't like what you see, then rather than trying to change everybody, her instruction was pretty clear. It was to look within. And she said, life gives you back what you put into life. Okay, and I was thinking, well, that's a lot like a computer. It can only respond to what you program it with. You've heard years ago people would say garbage in, garbage out. If you keep on thinking the positive stuff, then it's going to produce, positive. Louise next said, she said, you have been programming yourself most of your life. And I want to point out, this is neither good nor bad. It has nothing to do with good or bad or who's good and bad. It's just a simple fact. I have been programming myself all my life since I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I can remember vaguely. And then I remember early in kindergarten, I can remember that. And I can remember the first and second grade. I remember a lot of what was being told to me. That's programming. It isn't good or bad. It isn't that my parents did anything particularly bad. They passed on to me what they knew. I remember my mother late in her life, she said, if we knew what we knew now, we would have done it a lot differently. But whatever it is, that's it. We had programming. And we can talk about all that went wrong in our family, because some of us come from families where there was a certain amount of dysfunction. And most of us have a mixed bag where we had good instruction and love, and we had other stuff that maybe wasn't so good. The point of it is we had stuff. We had programming. And what do we do now is the question for this evening. So, we're most likely, most of us are still acting out on some of these patterns of learning that we had from the time we were very young. Today, though, thanks to our teaching and our understanding of the way it all works, we can definitely decide to turn it all around. We had a song we were playing tonight for you from Amy Steinberg, who did a wonderful rendition of You're Free to Turn It Around. I heard that a few years ago, and she'd love to come up here and sing it for us, and I'm sure we'll get her here to do it. And the point of the song, and it's really, you'll like it when you hear it, you're free to turn it around. It's entirely up to you. You don't have to live another day with the story. The story that someone is doing something to you, and life has dealt me a bad hand, and poor me, and ain't it awful. Those kind of stories won't bring you any place you want to go. Not a one of them. So here's an affirmation from Louise to you. She said, I see my patterns and I choose to make changes. That's just intelligence, right? I had a teacher, Bill Tolliver, who put on a marquee for a really big center at the time. He says, don't die dumb. And I used to laugh. I thought, what kind of minister would dare put that on the marquee of the church? Don't die dumb. Well, it's just because he's saying, once you understand that you are creating your life, and you know that there's a pattern or pattern of thought, and you know that life is responding to you, then why would you keep thinking these kind of thoughts that will take you where? We got to be too smart for that, right? We know that life responds to us. So then we want to learn to become the guardian at the gate of our thinking. It's just logical. It makes great sense. Otherwise, I think we're lost. It's just... So it's not a problem that we make mistakes necessarily. We all make mistakes. You've heard to err is human, right? To forgive is divine. We've all heard that before. So making problems isn't the problem. It's just, do you want to keep making the same problems over and over again endlessly, ad infinitum? You don't. So Louise said, I see my patterns and I choose to make changes. And furthermore, I'm going to add today, I know that there's a power in me and around me that will support me in making these changes. And I absolutely intend to stay with that power and to stay in the game because I don't want to just give up. If I forget that I'm connected, if I step back for a moment or a day, and I just forget who I am, if I become the prodigal child, meaning I get lost in my stories and poor me and ain't it awful, it's my strong intention to step up, shake it off, and go forward, knowing always and remembering again that I am supplied and supported. Deciding to change is a powerful thing. It's a simple thing. If you really mean it, and if you really want a better life, it's yours for the having. It's yours for the declaring. It's yours for the demanding. It's yours for the commanding. And I'm using those strong words deliberately because the law of life is such that it has to respond to you when you are connected with it and you believe what you're saying. You have a right to demand and command a good life. And since you're part of, one with this energy, this source, this God, it absolutely has to respond to you. We don't go around this process wishing and hoping. Because if you're wishing and hoping, it really means you don't believe. So we connect with the source, and we know that we're part of it. We're one with it. And it has to respond to us. Yes, most people in the world have no idea at all of the power they possess. They don't know that they're one with God, Goddess, and all that there is. They don't know that they're one with Source, and they don't know that they can command and demand. This is one of the reasons this teaching is so powerful. You're not just sitting there in meditation. From your meditation, you're waking up and realizing who you are, and that you have power to use. It's at your disposal. It's a shame if you live your life thinking that you're a victim of life. The universe is always one with you. And when you're aligned with it, you become a very, very powerful being on the planet. Your wish is its command. When you yourself are connected and aligned with it, and your awareness is centered in it, you are then an activity of this energy, this intelligence. You are a point of light within it, and it absolutely has to respond to you. Some of you are very new to the teaching, very new to Louise Hay and the metaphysical approach to life, the affirmative approach. You might, to some degree, be caught up in some story about who has done something to you, who's done you wrong, or what's wrong and what's missing. So that's a very common thing for most of the population. Or you might be someone who's in a conversation of who's right, who's wrong. And you can do that if you want to. I've spent far too many years of my life living that way. The thing to realize is life is a beautiful, magnificent, unfolding process, and it's unfolding in perfection. It's unfolding in perfection in you and in me and everywhere. Things have happened in my life, in your life, in everyone's lives, and sometimes they have been very sad, they've been painful. I think a lot of us, if we've been around for a while, have suffered, we've gone through pain. And the thing we understand from this teaching is all of us did the best we could with the understanding and awareness that we had at any given point in our life. Louise Hay was focused on teaching us the importance of loving ourselves the way we are. She also, I remember saying powerfully, I love the world the way it is. What a statement that is, especially as here we are in this day and age. I love the world the way it is. See, she had the consciousness of knowing that it's unfolding and evolving perfectly at every moment in time. And that's the thing with this teaching. If you have that consciousness, you're not disturbed by the events and circumstances around you, what people are saying and what they're doing. Your job is to work on your own consciousness. We do our work in consciousness. Louise had great understanding, and she was enlightened, knowing that people were evolving everywhere, just like we are, and knowing that all is well. Throughout her works, you will hear her say, all is well. Such a simple statement, such a profound statement. I love the world the way it is. It's hard for you to have that kind of knowing and trust in life, isn't it? It's a challenge. That's the practice of the religious scientist. That's the practice of a New Thought student, is to see the God and good whenever, however, no matter what. This is what we do. So it's taken me a long time, and I'm sure many of you are working on it just like I am still. And it was tough for me at different points in my life, I recall. But the more I contemplate these ideas, I know that all is well. And life is moving forward in me and through me and all around me. I really think the people who are here, the people who are participating in these types of calls, who are developing this kind of consciousness, are so, so fortunate. We're the lucky ones. There's always been a few from every generation that have had this type of metaphysical understanding, that life is an action of spirit, which is always unfolding in the world. I've been listening and counseling people for over 30 years myself, in the same way that Louise Hay did, And I can absolutely confirm that a lot of people are upset, and they get upset, and a lot of people just give up. They just, like, it's just too much. You know, we see on this street in New York, just about every business that was on the street is now closed. This is just one street in one city, you know, and I can imagine all through this city and cities all over the place. People's lives have been changed, you know, and people have gone through a lot, you know, and we listen to this, things, you know, people call with their challenges. And what do we do? What do we do now? I'm trying to remember my title. Yeah, what do we do now? Some people give up, not usually religious scientists, not usually us, not those of us who stay close to the center. It's really smart to be on these calls once or twice a week. I used to go to a class every week and at least one Sunday lesson because I didn't want to. It's easy to get out of it, and then you can descend into the what I'll call the stinking thinking or thinking life is against me and type of thing. So checking in here often or listening to us on Facebook or YouTube is always going to be helpful. Louise Hay said, you know, a lot of people give up. They throw up their hands in horror what's happened in their lives, the losses they've suffered, the messes that they have in their life. And they, you know, and they give up. There's been a lot of deaths and losses of every kind before and after COVID. The country, it seems, is reeling right now. And businesses, as I started to say, have closed and never to return. So there's mind-boggling amount of change going on right now. A lot of people are reacting and responding with anger. They're angry at themselves often. They're angry at others, not knowing. They're angry at people without even having a clue what the other people are going through. Large numbers of people have withdrawn and simply given up. People, though, in this teaching are really different. I mean, those of you who are actually here and applying some of it, if you're making an effort to see the God in the good, and that's your practice, you're a whole different breed of cat, because many of you are doing a lot of this inner work that we talk about. You're showing up here and you're gradually understanding that you yourself are a center of God activity. And you don't have to buy into any of the stories of what's going on in the world. You consciously decide to turn off that stuff as much as you can. You might have a need to be informed, but you don't dwell on that. I found personally over the years, meditation is really wonderful. I spend a lot of time in quiet contemplation when I'm not just working on these lessons. And when I do, I receive a lot of spiritual information or insight. It's the blend of this information, this inner guidance that we get, and the actual use of the teaching that we learn, that we have the power beyond meditation to heal our lives. We can learn to command and demand, you know, an upgraded life, you know, where we can step into a different reality than what, say, the people are doing in the streets. And I know when I use the words command and demand, they're strong. But the fact is you do have this power. So please do not give it away. Please do not dismiss it. Even if you're down in the dumps and your life is in a tough spot. You know, yesterday ended last night, said Barker, our founder here. And you know, you can do things that you don't think you can do. But you have to, first of all, let Spirit inform you. Sit in meditation. Quiet yourself down. Take a pause. And let Spirit reveal to you what it needs to. Ask yourself questions like I have through the years. Questions like, what's the most self-loving thing I can do right now about any given situation? If you make it that precise, you'll be amazed the information you'll get. And my thought is the first answer usually is the one. You know, when I start thinking about it, I might kind of rationalize and justify. But you have this information within you. And then once you have it, proclaim, you know, and command and demand, you know, there's a pattern of health in me operating through me now, and everything I need to know is revealed to me now, you know, or I am a prosperous being, and I release the need to think otherwise. And, you know, work with this inner spirit that's available to you. And it's, in fact, as Emerson said, always trying to get your attention. And as you start to work with it, proclaim the best version of you. Say, I want to grow, and I want to be the best version of myself that I can, and know that it is there and it's going to be revealed to you. The universe, by the way, everybody, will always fill in the details for you. There's a lot of reacting going on in the world right now. It's quite astonishing. And there is anger, and there's blame, and there's more blame, and there's more anger. Again, a lot of folks have given up on themselves, their goals. And it's sad to witness. I'm told many people get to a place where things seem hopeless. And we listen to the calls. We get the calls. Jimmy and I get a load of calls throughout the week. And some people are in the place where I don't even know why I try anymore. A lot of desperation. Many are hoping it just won't get worse. I think Louise once commented that habitual anger is like being stuck in a corner where you are absolutely missing out on all the best things that life has to offer. She also, another place, talked about it's like sitting in the corner with a dunce cap. Most people don't really know what they are. They came from the 13th century. But, it's sitting in the corner, you're just missing out on everything. Anger is the thing that will do it, and judgment. So, are you angry? Do you get angry? Are you reacting all the time? Are you critical? Are you using the word should all over the place? Because that's like condemning yourself or condemning someone else. It's a bad idea in either case. When something happens, are you easily triggered? Do you easily get angry? Or are you one of these unflappable religious scientists that I've known in my life where things come, things go, and you don't see their pulse even rise? It takes a while to get to that place. Or are you somebody where something happens, you get angry, and something else happens, and you just, all through the day, it's been one big reaction. It's a cycle. And Louise pointed out that's what many people do. It's probably what most people do. And for the most part, people don't get past that in their lives. And what good can that possibly do is what she asked, which is today's title, or part of today's title. No, it's what do we do now, okay? And she said regarding getting angry or judgmental and reacting, it doesn't do anything good at all. Nothing helpful. Louise thought being angry and getting angry was just a complete waste of your precious, precious time. I remember I think it was Auntie Mame, life is a banquet. You've heard it before, right? And I think she went on to say most sons of so-and-sos are starving to death. And really the idea there is there's so much here for you. You have such untapped resources. You are an inlet and outlet of God activity, and everything's here. And yet, it's a banquet. But most of the world is starving to death. So I got to thinking about that idea. And I did a little bit of research for you. I used myself. And I wanted to know how many days that I will statistically be on planet Earth. Of course, no one knows for sure, right? But if you go with my age and my gender and all that stuff, I'm supposed to be here somewhere between 28 and 30,000 days, just FYI, and on Earth. And I can spend a lot of those times, and I'm sure I'm spent a number of those days being angry and reactive. So I figured, using my analysis, that I have used 25,185 days so far, leaving me approximately 3,815 days. Those numbers got my attention, I can promise you. And I know that I'm not bound by the law of averages, so maybe instead of 3,815, I might have 4,815. Who knows, right? Still, it shows me and hopefully illustrates to all of you that it's time to let go of the reacting, the blaming, and the complaining. Now the question is, what do I want to do with those 3,815 days that remain, or more? right? Hopefully, I want to get to a point where I'm aware of the gift of life, the gift of this teaching. I want to be more conscious more often and release the need for any and all of the stories that I might be harboring, the resentments, the anger of any kind, that I get to be about, from Jesus, my Father's business. I don't have time for the other stuff, and not waste time on complaints or trivial matters. Our lesson today is, what do we do now? Here's my suggestion. I'm sure Louise Hay would concur. Live this day fully, and each moment of this day. Look to see the good in this day, in yourself and in others, and the beauty around you. As for me, I'm happy to share with you, and maybe you'd like to do something similar. I intend, as I've thought about this, to fully experience life and grow and make the absolute most of the time I have, choosing to be grateful, being appreciative of the knowledge I have, of this connection I have within, and living in appreciation of nature and the awareness that this good or this God energy is in everything and everyone and all the time. I intend to navigate this journey, and we are all one, in this journey, and I intend to be treating myself and others with as much compassion as I can muster, knowing that without exception that people are all growing and evolving. With this teaching and the remaining days, the 3,815 plus, I hope, right? I intend to have some fun, right? God, I want to get to a point where I don't have time for the pain or the nonsense, and use my experiences to show others that they have the ability to heal their life too. No matter what's happening. Louise spoke about the idea of being stuck. If you're new to new thought and self-healing, if you're in a bad place, it might seem like you're stuck. I've said this recently before, but you're not ultimately stuck. Life is moving through you and around you, regardless of what you think. But when we're reacting with anger, we are not playing the game of life in the best way. And when we're dug in on a position, I used to, when I was younger, irreverently say stuck on stupid, but I won't say that tonight. When we're dug in some place that's not particularly good for us, it's just a refusal to see life in a new and different way. You know the old question, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? See, that's a question that's entirely up to you. Being right is overrated, I think. You may not know this, it's something I learned years ago. You don't have to respond to everything. I was in a church in Florida, and I had two people who were always complaining, and I just learned just to listen to them and nod, and I don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to either. Just because it's there, just because it is asked. Oftentimes, things come into our lives. We probably have even created them or participated in their showing up. But you don't have to argue. You don't have to retaliate. You don't have to judge. You don't have to get in the last word. You don't have to do anything. Here's another little spiritual gem I learned many years ago that may be of value to you. You don't have to explain yourself, nor do you have to defend yourself. Each of us here are awakening to the idea, the fact that you are a divine being of light and love, and you're learning that you don't have to complain nor explain. There's a line from a book that I'm very fond of that says, "In my defenselessness, my safety lies." See, there's all kinds of interactions where people want to get you going and react. You just simply don't have to respond. I could do an entire workshop on that one line. It's probably been one of the best things that guided me for many years. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. People have all kinds of opinions, and that's great. I first and foremost honor their ability to express their free thoughts. But that doesn't mean, Terry Cole Whitaker wrote that book. What you think of me is none of my business. I have enough time taking care of my own inner thoughts, quite honestly. So I can't manage other people's. For now, for today, in terms of what do we do now, let's realize that you are a unique, wonderful spiritual being like none other that's ever been before. And you're here, and you're learning, and you're growing, and you're here to express more, and have more joy, and have more happiness. And you don't have to apologize for being who you are. You don't have to dumb it down. You don't have to hide your light. You don't have to give your power away by getting into any kind of arguments with anyone. And these are arguments that it's a waste of time. They're not going to understand you anyway. You don't have the need to be right, hopefully. If you're practicing this teaching and realizing who you are, you don't have the need to be involved in that. You've already released it, and you will continue to release the need to prove yourself to anyone and the need to react or to be angry. Louise Hay thought it would be much more helpful to ask yourself why you're creating so many situations to get angry at. See, it's always great to bring it back to ourselves. You know, what's in me that's creating the need for all this stuff, this anger? What are you believing that causes all this frustration? See, in metaphysics, you begin to understand that we are one with this one energy and that everyone else is a part of it also. So if we're smart and and I know you all are, and we're elevating our consciousness all the time, then we are reorienting ourselves all the time to truth, which means that there is God, there is love, and there is nothing else. There is God, there is love, and there is nothing else. Because whatever it is that you're trying to label as wrong or bad is spirit evolving in another person or in life itself. There is no other. There is God. There is spirit. Spirit is everywhere present all the time. More useful questions would always involve taking any situation in your life back to yourself, Shakespeare. Why do I say that? Because you're writing the script. So what am I creating this to be? Who am I? See, we bring in people, we have these interactions, and everything is a teacher to us ultimately. So more useful questions would always involve taking any situation back to yourself. So what am I doing? And what am I creating? And what am I giving out? What am I giving out that attracts this? Attracts irritating people to me. Do you believe, using anger is helpful? Was a question that Louise Hay had in her workshop. And then after they processed that question, she said something you've heard often before. Whatever you're giving out comes back to you. And some people say multiplied. The more you give out anger, the more you're creating situations for you to get angry at. It gets you to go absolutely nowhere. Now, then comes the question is, does this lesson bring up feelings of anger for you? Some of you might be annoyed by it. And that's okay, because it might be hitting home. You might notice, my God, I react to everything all the time. And if you do, just it isn't that you. Please don't use this as something to beat yourself up over. But if you're angry often, you're using the word should often. It's just like, okay, newsflash. I want to get a handle on this because it's not working to my highest and best. Possibly, it's something you might want to change. We never tell you what to think or what to do here. We have no dogma. But, I would say if you notice that you're reacting a lot, maybe it's time to make a decision. It might be time to become willing to change. As I mentioned, this is your precious life. That was kind of a shocking realization for me today. My age, my years on earth, and that number 3815 days, 3,815, and hopefully a hell of a lot more. The thing is, this is your precious life. It could be a banquet. It doesn't have to be a horror story. If you want to know whether you're stubborn or not, or how stubborn you are, just approach the idea, approach the whole thing of life as I'm willing to change. We all want to have our lives change, and we want our situations to get better. And many of us are longing for more and greater self-expression, and we're using vision boards, and we're developing a bigger vision. And this is really great because it'll bring you towards this bigger life. But we have a challenge. We want our lives to change. We want things to improve so we can be happier. We want to level up in consciousness so we're not reacting to everything. So we want to have change, but we don't want to change. So what are we going to do with that? We want to have change. I want what they have, those people with that spiritual understanding. I used to be like that, right? But then the thing is, I didn't want to change. So, here's the thing. I've said this lesson 1,000 different ways. Benjamin Franklin used to say, assume a virtue if you have it not. Practice it for 13 weeks, or whatever it is, and we'll go to the next one. If you want to have the great life that you could be having, the banquet, we want change, but then we must be willing to pray for the willingness to change. We'd prefer other people to change, right? In order to have this great life that's waiting for us to experience, we must change inside. Willingness, they've been telling me for 40 years, is the key that opens all the doors. We intend to change our way of thinking, we intend to change our way of speaking, we intend to change our way of expressing ourselves if we really want to go for it. And I know some of you on this call are really willing to do this work. I know some of you are committed, you really want to step into the next realm where nothing and no one is bothering you, and where you're living the affirmative life in such a way that you've become relieved of the bondage of self. That was Ernest Holmes' gift. He says, find me one person, who's so living this teaching that they are relieved from the bondage of self. And he says, I'm going to want to hang out with that person and be with that person. And the thing is, ultimately, it's up to us, each of us, to be that person. If you have the willingness, this will be our next step. This is what we do now. You don't have to be doing it perfectly, by the way. We come to these calls and we stay involved in this teaching. We stay the course. We take it a day at a time, sometimes a moment at a time. We keep practicing. We keep practicing seeing the good and knowing that there's a presence and a power in us and through us. We're now fairly clear on what the problems are and where they came from. We know it isn't about anyone else. This inner journey is about us. And that's brilliant, and that's great, because we can change us. We can change our thinking, and we can change our life. We can heal our life. We can't change others directly. As we live our best lives and become our best selves, we will be helping many. It's really enough that you learn to love yourself, because as you love yourself, you're going to radiate a different joy and happiness and knowing that will help heal, many, many, many. Now is the time to be willing to change and step up our game. We have enough time. See, I'm looking at that number 3815. It's plenty of time if I use it wisely. But we don't have time to waste. I've always had a streak of stubbornness within me. Even now, when I decide to make a change in my life, there's that part of me that resists, can come to the surface. And my resistance to changing is strong. And then we get self-righteous sometimes, or angry. This all goes on within, even after all these years of work. It's one of my lessons. This was Louise speaking. However, when this happens, I know I'm hitting an important point in my life. Every time I decide to make a change in my life, to release something else, I'm going ever deeper into myself to do this. Each old layer must give way in order to be replaced with new thinking. Some of it's easy, and some of it's like lifting a boulder. The more I work at it, more tenaciously I hold, and the more tenaciously I hold on to an old belief, when I want to make a change, the more I know that it's an important one for me to release. It's only by learning these things that I can teach others. It's not my opinion that many really good teachers do not come from joyful households where all was easy. No, excuse me, she said, it is my opinion that many really good teachers do not come from these households where everything's easy. They come from a place where there's been a lot of pain and suffering, and that they've worked through layers upon layers to reach the place where they are. I know that would be true for me. Most teachers, good teachers, are continually working on themselves throughout their lives with more and more determination to remove ever deeper layers of opinion and limitation. This becomes a lifetime practice. I no longer choose to believe that I'm a bad person just because I find something else to change within me. And the next section of that seminar had to do with mental house cleaning, where you're really willing to do the work.